My name's Kelsey. I'm 32 and I live in Austin, Texas. I always thought I knew what kind of man I wanted. Strong, assertive, the kind who walks into a room and people notice, the kind who doesn't flinch. My dad was like Thathard, loud, always in control. So when I met Ryan, he was the complete opposite. He was quiet, gentle, thoughtful in a way that sometimes annoyed me. Like he'd ask before doing literally anything. Do you want the window open? Should I park here? I used to think it was sweet. Thoughtfulness is rare, right? But over time, it started to feel like weakness. We were married for 3 years, and I swear, I thought I loved him the whole time. But the truth is, I think I just liked how he made me feel. Safe, in control, like I was the one steering the ship. He never argued, never raised his voice. He'd apologize even when things weren't his fault, and that made me feel powerful. Too powerful. The night it happened, it wasn't anything special. Just dinner at home, leftover pasta, some wine, a dumb Netflix show playing in the background. And somehow, the topic turned to a break-in that happened in our neighborhood. One of those what-would-you-do conversations. I laughed and said something like, "Oh God, if someone ever broke in here, I'd probably have to protect you." It came out with a chuckle. Harmless. A joke. But he didn't laugh. I didn't even notice at first, I just kept going. I mean, you're sweet, babe, but let's be real, you'd probably freeze or try to talk the guy down. You're too soft to be a real man in that kind of situation. He was silent. I looked up. His fork was still in his hand, halfway to his mouth. His face was blank, not angry, not even hurt, just hollow, like I'd flipped a switch and shut something off inside him. Then he stood up, quietly, pushed his chair back, walked to the bedroom. Didn't say a word. I called after him, a little confused. "Oh, come on, Ryan, it was a joke. Don't be so sensitive." He didn't answer. I thought maybe he needed a minute. Or maybe he'd come back out and we'd move on, like we always did. He never liked confrontation. I figured he was pouting or something. I even rolled my eyes a little. Thought he'll get over it. But he didn't come back out. When I went to the bedroom later, he was gone. His side of the closet looked emptier. Some of his clothes were missing. So was his laptop bag. He'd left. Still no text. No call. Nothing. At first, I was pissed. Who just leaves like that? Over a joke? I texted him something sarcastic. Really mature, Ryan. Running away instead of talking about it. No reply. Next morning, still nothing. I started to feel nervous. Not because I thought something had happened to him, but because I realized maybe he wasn't coming back. And that's when the panic set in. The first time we fought really fathered cried. I remember thinking it was kind of pathetic. A grown man, tearing up because I'd said he didn't make decisions fast enough. But now, I kept remembering that moment. The way he'd tried to explain himself. The way he'd said, "I just want you to see me as your equal." And then she walked in. She looked the same, but not quite. Her hair was shorter, and there were subtle signs of exhaustion under her eyes. It was as if she had aged 5 years in the months we had been apart. When she saw me, her eyes welled up, and for a moment, she stood there, unsure whether to come closer. But she did. She sat down, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at her, trying to process the moment. I had imagined this encounter so many times, but now that it was real, the words wouldn't come. The hurt was still there, raw and fresh. She spoke again, her voice trembling. "I've missed you. I know what I did was wrong and I regret everything." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the woman sitting across from me was the same one I once loved, the woman who had meant the world to me. But as I looked at her, vulnerable and broken, something inside me told me she wasn't the same. She couldn't be. "I never meant for it to happen," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep both of you in my life, but when I lost you, I realized how much you meant to me." The words hit me, but not the way I had imagined. They didn't break my heart. They didn't make me feel anything but cold. I swallowed hard, my voice steady but cold. "What is this? Is this about you wanting me back, or is this about realizing you lost your safety net?" Her face fell, and for the first time, I saw the truth in her eyes. She didn't miss me. She missed the way I made her feel. She missed the comfort, the security I had provided. The life she thought she had with me. She didn't come back because she couldn't live without me. She came back because her backup plan had failed her. Her new life hadn't turned out the way she hoped, and now she wanted to make sure I was still an option. I stood up, feeling the weight of the realization settle over me. The clarity was overwhelming. "I think you should go," I said, my voice firm. She didn't argue. She didn't try to convince me otherwise. She just nodded, her face a mask of disappointment and regret. Then she left. I stayed behind, watching her walk away. The weight of that moment was heavier than anything I had felt in months. But as I walked away from the cafe, something strange happened. A sense of peace washed over me. I had done the right thing. I had walked away. But here's the twist, the part I didn't expect. As I reached my car, I glanced at my phone. Another message. It was from her. This time, it wasn't the usual "I miss you" message. It wasn't about regret. It wasn't an attempt to fix anything. No, this message was different. "I didn't just want you back because I made a mistake," she wrote. "I wanted you back because I realized something about myself. I've been using people, making them feel needed to fill the emptiness inside me. But what I had with you was real. I finally understand that now, and I'm sorry, more than you'll ever know." I stared at the words. They weren't an apology for what she had done to me. They weren't an attempt to fix things. This was her realizing that she had been broken too. That her regret wasn't just about meat, was about losing the one thing that had ever made her feel whole. In that moment, I understood something important. Sometimes the hardest thing to accept is that someone has to go through their own pain to finally realize the value of what they had. But for both of us, it was too late. I deleted the message, not because I didn't care, but because I had finally learned something about myself too. The past was behind me. Her regret didn't change anything. I wasn't going to wait around for someone who only understood my worth after they lost me.